Hi. Tonight I'm starting a series called Hidden Healings in Your Birth Story. That was going to be the workshops I offered this year, which have been canceled because of COVID, but also it's the title of my new book I've been working on. It takes a long time to write a good book and edit it and get it out. And I thought that while that process was happening slowly, I would like to share with you some of the nuggets in that book so that you can have some guidance to process your own story or help others process theirs. So the hidden healings in your birth story means just that no matter what happened, no matter where you are in the process of recovering or looking for meaning or healing, that if you keep going, you'll find there's something in the story that is your medicine that brings you to self-love. So tonight's our first class, the first video, and I'm starting with something I've noticed as a birth story mentor. People start their birth stories in different places, and I don't know if they always start their birth story in the same place, or it varies. But when they come to see me, I've noticed that some people start their birth story at the end of the story, because I think we have a goal-oriented, birth plan-oriented culture. That's the phase of birth culture we're in right now. The storyteller who really was shooting for a certain goal, hoping for a certain experience or outcome, they begin with whether or not they achieved that outcome. So the story will begin with, I had a cesarean, or my birth was uneventful, but I shouldn't complain, and yet they're kind of hesitant to say about this little thing that happened that's still bothering them. So other people will start at the very beginning of their story, from conception or insemination or the first contraction, and they tell the story in a very linear way all the way through the experience. Still others will start somewhere in the middle and work their way back and forward. But when they start in the middle, sometimes they're starting with a specific incident, the heart of the story perhaps, the thing they're most wanting to understand. I wonder if people tell their birth stories in the same way they eat corn on the cob. So I thought I would take a look at that with you and also give you a process to explore that. But I'm husking my corn to tell you this, to make this video. There we go. All right. So some people eat their corn on a cob, kind of like a typewriter. They start at one end, and then they go to the next row and the next row and the next row. And they're very organized. And I just wonder if they tell their birth story in the same way, in an organized, linear sort of way. Other people will eat it in the rotation style, and they go around and around. And I have noticed that some people tell their stories that way. They kind of go around and around, and they go back and around, and they think about it. And eventually they move their way through the story. And then there's others who kind of hit and miss when they eat their corn, kind of eat it wherever they happen to pick it up, they take a nibble. And I think when people tell a birth story in a way that is not sequential, it's out of sequence, it's all over the place, they may be very soon after birth, before they've had a chance to organize the sequence of the birth. That's kind of an actual function of the brain and time that happens with all stories. Or maybe they're still in trauma and their mind is very disorganized about what happened. They really haven't been able to make sense of it, so it's out of sequence. You know, when people eat corn and it's really, really hot, you notice how we kind of nibble at the end where we think the corn might be cooler, like that, just a little on the edges. You know, I think sometimes people tell the story that way too. They nibble on the very edge of the story, telling maybe the positive parts or just the most peripheral parts, because the story is just too hot emotionally and spiritually for them to tell or to tell publicly. I wanted to propose an idea. Ask yourself, do I always start my story in the same place in the same way? Do I always journal it in the same place in the same way? And out of curiosity, do an experiment and start your story from the other end or from the middle and see what happens. Sometimes when we start a story in a different way, it reveals something different to us, because our mind then has to start remembering things in a different way, in a different order, and maybe the hidden healing will be revealed to you. It's kind of like when you eat corn. If all the corn has been nibbled off a certain part of the cob, and you keep going back and you're nibbling the same place, there's no corn there. There's nothing there to feed you. So by moving your moving your cob, and going from another place and taking a nibble, maybe you'll find something unexpected. You know how in mindfulness workshops, the leaders often give you a raisin, and they ask you to eat a raisin very mindfully so you can actually taste something that is familiar to you, and to really focus on the texture and the juices and the flavor. And this is a wonderful exercise. And in the same way, I'm going to propose you find one kernel in your birth story, just one little kernel. Just pluck off one kernel and look at it. And doing this process alone, close your eyes and really see that one kernel, that one moment of your birth story. Hear it. Remember what you heard when it was happening. Listen to what you're telling yourself. Feel what it felt like then, and most importantly, what it feels like now. What is the flavor of that one moment now? And do it very, very slowly, turning it over and over, so you can really experience that moment instead of having it packed in with all the other bits and pieces of your story, so that that moment is just, you can see it's not separate from all these. So you want to separate that one kernel from all of these other bits and pieces and memories of the story where it gets lost. And you want to pluck it out and look at it and taste it and hear it and feel it and remember it, and really be really quiet inside so you can tune into what is the meaning. Ask yourself, what is the meaning I am giving this moment now? What is the feeling of this one kernel of my story now? And whatever it is, don't rationalize it, don't rush past it. Just be with it. That's the hardest part of birth story work, is when it hurts or it's confusing or it's something you regret. There's a tendency to explain it, to defend it, or to try not to think about it, or to compare it to somebody else's birth. And all these different these different things our mind does, instead of just, what was that moment? Well, when you do that, be very quiet. Remember, you must do this in solitude. And it helps sometimes to find an image for the new insight, or a word, or a sentence. And if you like to journal, you may write, but just write very little. Try not to fill up this moment with lots and lots and lots of words and explanations. But try to find, even in your words, like a haiku, the essence of what that moment means to you now, or the new question that's coming up in your heart, the heart's question about this moment. And then sit with that for another day or two or a week and see what unwinds from it. It may help to make a sketch or a sculpture. And then follow that sketch or sculpture, the symbol that comes up. Follow it to see what unfolds after it and what unfolds after it. Because the first insight you get may be the conscious insight. It may be something that's kind of already familiar to you. But if you can dare to let it unfold and unfold and unfold, it may go deeper and deeper and deeper into something you've not yet tapped into. And that's where the hidden medicine is. So give it a try. And I'd love for you to write us on Facebook or write us privately and tell us what you're discovering. Continue to follow Hidden Healings in Your Birth Story this summer. There'll be a lovely series, and I hope you'll find some helpful ideas and exercises as you process and find meaning in your birth.